I think that's bigger than like the city of Santee.
Oh, yeah. It's bigger than the city of Santee and the city of El Cajon combined. I said we're the largest employer in the East
So a
County.
lot of people, I think that, school boards get overlooked. And,
They do.
And you just kind of,
Hey, is there a better tool that empowers a woman to defend against an attacker?
No.
That's bigger and stronger?
Nope.
That's why it's so important for women to learn how to defend themselves with the most effective self-defense tool ever invented for women led by women. The Not Me program is designed to help with training, purchasing a gun, and getting a concealed carry permit. And guess what? It's totally free. Sign up, go to notmesd.org.
all right, we're back with Jim Miller.
Mike?
So, like I said, I want to talk about your Second Amendment advocacy. So before we get into the Miller case, so why did you join San Diego County Gun Owners as a founding board member?
Other than you calling me and saying, "Hey, Jim, I have this really great idea, and I think we should put this together," and then me buying fully into it because it was, in fact, a great idea. The concept between San Diego County Gun Owners and being local, and I'm a lifetime NRA member.
Yep.
And I think a lot of our board members and other supporters were involved with the NRA, but realizing in politics how the NRA does not help us locally. Right? They're very good at coming in and asking us for money, and then it's typically a national issue or a campaign that's outside of San Diego County and quite often outside of California. Mm-hmm. The concept of staying local, the concept of, Jim, the water board guy is going to run for city council at some point, and when he goes from city council, he's going to go to state assembly, and then when he goes from state assembly, he might bounce back to county supervisor or go up to state senate, and they all start so local. If you have an educated, forget about for a moment advocacy, but if you haven't educated them on the Second Amendment, if you haven't educated them on firearm safety, they're going to get their education from someplace,
Yep.
and typically that is an anti-Second Amendment, anti-gun safety organization, whether it's Everytown or Moms Demand Action or whatever. It's going to come from the other side, and then by the time they can get to a point where they can cause a problem, which is typically city council or then certainly at the state level, they're so influenced you can't even have that conversation with them logically and factually. They've bought into the dogma on the other side.
And before San Diego County Gun Owners, they did a good job. It wasn't like, hey, we're the Brady organization, the anti-gun folks. It was, hey, I'm your local gun safety advocate, and so what I want to do is make sure you fully understand the concept behind how we're going to keep kids safe by taking away everybody's guns and rights. You know what I mean? It was, well, how do I argue with that? And there was nothing to offset it. And I think, you've seen, once you're in an elected position, especially, I'd say at least school board, but water board, school board, fire board, once you're in an elected position, it is enormously easier to run for higher office than someone who just, maybe they're running a business or whatever. Anything else they're doing, for some reason, donors, people that endorse, party, organizations are much more comfortable with somebody who's won an election.
It comes down to the viability issue. Are you viable? Have you had people put your name down on a ballot before? And if you are, you have a better opportunity to gain the appropriate support to move forward to win other elections.
And that's the concept right there. Yep. That's really that's the foundation for San Diego County Gun Owners. So when we came to you and said, hey, we're going to put together a board, we're going to do this thing, did you think it was going to succeed?
I thought we had a fair to middling chance in San Diego based upon the overall support, the number of gun owners, the number of people who are interested in the concept, and the passion of our leader, which is you, to make sure that we were unapologetically pro-Second Amendment, and whatever the other issues were, there were no other issues. We were a Second Amendment organization, and that focus, whether that ruffled some feathers in one side or the other, is irrelevant because it made us successful. And nobody can argue the success with the thousands of members that we currently have, the support that we've gained in the industry, and that the fact that when we put a candidate now forward and they say you're endorsed by the San Diego County Gun Owners Political Action Committee, that is a legitimate endorsement that frankly, other organizations need to pay attention to. They're like, well, if the gun owners is on board, this person's viable. If this person's viable, we need to maybe reevaluate or have them come on because we want to be part of success. Everybody wants to be part of a team that's winning, and right now we're winning.
Yeah, and, if you what we wanted to make sure of is if someone was running and they weren't endorsed by us, they knew they were going to have to work harder. When that work could be they were going to have to get more volunteers, they're going to have to raise more money. If you go, well, shoot, if I don't get this organization's endorsement, I'm going to have to raise an extra, $200,000. That's a huge consideration. $200,000 doesn't just fall off trees or whatever.
Not absolutely. And on the local boards, I mean, $5,000 can tilt the difference.
Oh yeah, on the local board, yeah. $200,000 would be like a supervisor.
Supervisor, state senate, something like that. But yeah, on a local board, on a water board, $500 can make a difference. On a school board, $5,000, depending upon size of the district, $5,000 to $10,000 makes a huge difference. So
okay, so that was the concept. We just really wanted to beat that into the ground. That hey, we're trying to get people elected. But what came along, starting San Diego County Gun Owners, we had a number of a whole spectrum of feedback from other organizations. Some of the national organizations didn't want anything to do with us, and some of them really embraced us. Most just kind of said, "Hey, good luck, see you later. Do your thing. Play your part on the field. We're going to do ours." And but Firearms Policy Coalition really stepped up and said, "Great, we're gonna do what we do really, really well. We want you guys to do what you do really, really well. And if there's an opportunity for us to work together, we're going to do it." And it took a couple of years to figure out exactly how to work together effectively, but we did it. We figured it out.
Yeah.
So they organized the lawsuits, and then we helped them organize the lawsuits. Sometimes we do a little fundraising. They do the lion's share of the funding of the lawsuits and organizing. But one thing we're really, really good at is making sure that they have plaintiffs,
right?
And making sure that they have amicus briefs, and making sure that So for the first time in U.S. history, a lawsuit that was trying to strike down an assault weapons ban or that type of ban had a victory. Was the Miller case. That was the first time in U.S. history that we had a victory.
Well, like I said, we're a winning team.
Yep. So what can you tell us about you being Miller?
Yeah, that's me.
What can you tell us about can you give us an update or?
Sure. So first of all, I want to thank all the other plaintiffs, right? My name just happened to come up first, I suppose, on the draw, so it comes to my name, and I'm very proud to carry that banner.
And by the way, if you're a member of San Diego County Gun Owners, you're a plaintiff in the Miller case. You're making history because we're San Diego County Gun Owners in general is a plaintiff, but we like to put a person as the named plaintiff because that's a story. That's a real story. You're a real person. You're a real respectable pillar of society who serves on a school board, and your rights are being violated. So we always put a name first. But anyway, go ahead.
Oh yeah, the assault weapons definition affects me. We had to put the block on my M4. We had to do a number of different things. Being on the school board helps. Being an attorney by trade, I think, helps. Being a longtime CCW holder helps. I'm somewhat vetted, right, to be the plaintiff or one of the plaintiffs. So I was proud to be able to sit on the board and take the shot as the plaintiff.
Plus, your last name's Miller, so to be on the Miller case, it fit perfectly.
It worked out. It's like they wrote it up for me. Yeah. But no, the update on the case, and I was just talking to our lawyers the other day. So, as we all know, the Bruin case came down out of New York, right? Judge Benitez, Saint Benitez, decided to have the case rebriefed when it came back to his court after it got kicked back from the Ninth Circuit. And there were 4 rounds. There's been 4 rounds of briefing to go back and around, trying to, again, the state is trying to say there has been, in fact, a traditional restriction on firearms in the country. That's their position because under the Bruin case, that's what they have to prove in order to have an appropriate restriction on a constitutional issue. And some of those briefings, according to the counsel, they're pretty far a stretch to try to make those two things come together. But now that the briefing rounds are done, we expect a decision on the most recent concept here.
Quick.
Anytime.
Anytime.
It could be this week. It could be within 30 days. And I think it's fair to say that a 30 to 60-day window is not unreasonable. I think it'd come down. And once that happens, all right, I fairly believe that given the comments from the bench, we're going to win again. We should win again. There's no reason why we shouldn't. The law got better for us, and we have already won on the old law, on the old establishment. So then we go up to the Ninth Circuit.
And his Benitez, the decision, his first decision, which was favorable,
Absolutely.
was, I mean, it was almost cut and paste with the Bruin decision.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that was an accident.
Not at all. And keep in mind that we then went to the Ninth Circuit, and we won at the Ninth Circuit when the state challenged us. We didn't lose at the Ninth Circuit until there was a full in-bank panel.
Right.
And then when it comes back to Benitez's court here in the trial level, now we have Bruin to, again, support where we need to go with it. So Bruin helps us, just as we somewhat, in theory, could have helped Bruin by way of the briefing and the arguments. So no, we're good to go. Bobby Bonta and Gavin Newsom should be very, very worried about how this is going to turn out. And I can't wait till the next press conference. I always like it when they say my name. We say in athletics, make them say your name. Well, Gavin Newsom says my name every now and again. So
I just had an image of you watching the press conference going, say my name. Say it. Say my name.
100%, buddy. 100%.
It's not his fault anyway.
Right?
So what, I think this is going to, I think we're going to have to, or we'll be able to get rid of all the stupid stuff we got to do to our semi-automatic rifles. I don't think we're going to have to do fins anymore. We're not going to have to do the juggernaut thing. And all this stuff's going to go away.
Fins, I mean, the whole nonsense, the pinning of magazines, however you've been working around the issue. And then, of course, we have the Duncan case, right? So we'll get our standard 30-round capacity magazines. For those that didn't buy them during Freedom Week, we'll be able to start using those as well.
And you didn't even hesitate when approached and said, "Hey, we're looking for plaintiffs." There was zero hesitation. You said, "Yeah, let's jump on this."
No, I was pretty much as fast as I could say yes. I was in.
But you weren't worried about. There was none of this. Well, gee, I got to get reelected. I'm on a school board, and you guys, listeners, you would be shocked. The toughest, loudest, supposed pro-Second Amendment people, when I'm talking to them one-on-one, their feet are so cold. They got all kinds of excuses. Not Jim. Jim was like, yeah, let's do this yesterday, right now, get it done.
And I was happy to do it. I mean, but that comes from my background, right? I'm used to having people disagree with me, and let's jump in and make it happen.
Yeah, and you do an excellent job.
Hey, a lot of companies waste an enormous amount of money on marketing. The design is excellent, the photos are beautiful, and your website looks great, but it's not getting customers. Why? Because you don't have the words that make people buy. But now you can fix that with Sage Tree. Sage Tree can help you find the words that make it easy for your customers to understand what you do and how to buy from you. Stop wasting money today and schedule a call. Getting started is super easy. Visit sagetree.com and click on the Schedule an Appointment button. That's sagetree.com and click on the Schedule a Call button.
Dave, my new obsession with watches?
I already seen you nailed it.
Yeah, did you see it? Did you see what's on his wrist?
The Timex.
He's an Omega man.
The Timex.
It's not a It's not a Timex, Dave.
It's a decal.
All right. It's a fancy time.
Yeah, it's a decal.
There we go.
So we're talking to Jim Miller, founding board member of San Diego County Governors. Of course, the Miller assault weapons ban case that we're going to win and mop the floor with Gavin Newsom's shiny hair. So let's talk about one of the things. So you're on a school board. I just think that's absolutely. I can't tell you. I mean, I think 10 years ago when I'm hanging out with all the other Second Amendment advocates, and it's like a dream case. Like, oh, we should file a lawsuit. And the main guy should be like a school board member. Wouldn't that be great? You know what I mean?
Perfect.
Here it is.
Yeah.
So talk about the school board. What inspired you? You've been involved. You've been very involved. Not just like, hey, I watch Fox News and complain. Like, you're involved in politics and have been for a while. What inspired you to run for school board?
And what district?
So it's Cajon Valley Union School District. El Cajon, Rancho San Diego. We have 16,000 kids, 27 schools. We're the largest employer in the East County. We have over 2,300 employees. Avant-garde as far as our superintendent, exceptionally intelligent individual. Before I came on, we hired him. COVID hit. We had the blip. every kid in our school district was already working off of technology, take-home Chromebooks. So if you were third grade or above, you already knew how to work off of a playlist that your teacher had given you. And then from kindergarten through second grade, we just had to give you Chromebooks, and we were off and running. There were other districts that didn't have that capability. Even those that had technology weren't taking them home. That's a very big difference when you're allowing a kid to take an iPad home, or in our case, a Chromebook. So David Mirashiro, who is our superintendent, was well ahead of that curve. It's almost as he was planning for COVID. And then we were the largest public school district in the state of California that stayed open during COVID with the waiver system. So March 16th, the world shut down. We went into spring break. We had a meeting. The only hotel that would allow us to have a meeting of 200 people was the Marriott down in Coronado. We had a 3-day meeting with our presidents of our teachers union, presidents of our classified union, their representatives, all of our admin staff, all of our top admins, and some consultants who came in. Like, how can we make this happen? How can we keep schools open? Because in the East County, I'd like to say that the East County is still America, right? So we still want to get things done appropriately.
Yeah.
And we came up with a plan. And that plan at that point in time, because the state had us locked down, was obviously a distance learning plan. But we opened our entire facilities, every facility we could, for essential worker daycare, which the state had obligated to school districts, but other school districts didn't do. So if you were a firefighter, you were a police officer, you were a nurse, you were in the medical field, even if your kid didn't go to Cajon Valley schools, they could come to our daycare and be educated, because they could take part with our technology and what our learning lists were at that time. 3 meals a day. We had drive-through meals at all of our sites, 3 meals a day. Whether you were in our district or not, if you looked like you were under 18 years old, you're getting a meal from us. Exactly.
So you did a great job with COVID. I really do think that COVID in general, there are so few elected officials who are serving during COVID who I think should be reelected. I mean, so few. There were so many that did absolutely nothing or were counterproductive during COVID. And here, you're definitely one of the people that proved your mettle.
Oh, Mike, it drives me absolutely nuts, because when it comes to the education of students, they talk about this learning loss, right? These kids that they didn't get socialized, they had this learning loss, they couldn't play sports. That was another thing that I was able to put back together with a coalition of people to put sports back for our kids, countywide, by the way, for that one. But learning loss doesn't happen unless you just sit on your hands. And we didn't. At Cajon Valley, we led that fight, and we got kids back in school. And then one last thing I'm going to make this point is, that summer, you couldn't have summer school, right? Schools were shut down. But you could have camps, right? The state said you could have camps. So what did we do at Cajon Valley?
You just had a big old camp.
Summer school became Camp Cajon. And we had 6,000 kids on campus as a proof of concept that if we used the funds received from the federal government and we did our distance spacing and we did our PPE and everything else, we had one transmission of COVID, 1 out of 6,000 kids in 2.5 months.
Right. See, now, let me just point something out, Dave. So I'm sitting there talking to Jim about how mad I am at government officials, and he is still focused on kids. Hey, he's still saying, hey, you know what? I wanted to make sure the kids can learn. Wanted to make sure they didn't fall behind. Here I am. I'm just mad, And Jim's still like, you know what?
You have two choices.
His focus is kids.
Get mad or get the job done.
Absolutely.
That's
and
what Jim
especially with government, I think it's more fun to figure out how to get around their stupidity.
Oh yeah, work the problem, and that comes. You asked me in the first session, how does a Second Amendment guy work on a government board? How many times in the Second Amendment do we have to work around the stupid laws that the state of California has put on us? And we get around them all the time, right? You just have to be a little bit creative, and you have to have people, though, around you that are willing to do so. So David Mirashiro, our cabinet, and again, I have nothing but positive things to say about even the union leadership in our district, that we all came together and we pushed in the same direction. And when you push in the same direction and you don't care about who gets the credit, things get done.
Can you fix a Padre game? Padres?
My background as a professional sports agent, I may have some concepts on that.
You
actually.
could do that.
So let's talk about those. So as a Second Amendment advocate, one of the other important things that, of course, affects a school that has a lot of overlapping circles with Second Amendment advocacy is security. Talk about the enormous, because you guys were leaders in COVID.
Yep.
You guys are also enormous leaders when it comes to security.
Absolutely. So I was on the plane. I was at a conference. We were lecturing and presenting at a conference 4 years ago in Florida. I got on the plane just as Parkland happened, the Parkland shooting happened. When I got elected, I had already talked about moving forward with our safety and security protocols. What do we need to do? How do we need to revamp this? Because in the East County, we have had 2 high school shootings that are fairly well known, the Santana shooting and the Grand Hill shooting. Now, this was back in the 90s. And I will, again, for those of you on the radio, I will remind you that despite the media hype from the left, your students are safer in school today per capita than in the 1990s.
Absolutely.
People do not understand the way that statistic breaks down. It's just because the media cycle, with social media in particular, can put what's happening on your Facebook page, on your Twitter page right now, does not mean that it's more than it traditionally is. You're actually safer today. So what happens, we come back from Florida, the Parkland shooting happens, we're already in process. Luckily, because I'm on the board, and I'm on the board with some very specialized understanding people in the Second Amendment world, in the defensive combat and defensive handgun world, former military, and I reached out to Mike. I said, Mike, who's on a board that can really give us a tutorial on how to keep kids safe? Yeah. And we reached out to some other school districts and said, who have you used? And between those 2 backgrounds, we pulled one from our own to train not just teachers and staff, but students. That was an element that no other school district had ever done. It's not just duck and cover 1982 because you're worried about the nuclear bomb going off. I didn't realize that the desk was actually a nuclear bomb shelter, by the way, when I was 12. But nonetheless, training the students as to how to act, where to go. And then we brought on a gentleman named Ryan Love, former San Diego Sheriff, El Cajon PD, District Attorney Investigator, to become our head of safety and security, which we didn't have that position. And Ryan's relationships with our law enforcement community, sheriffs in El Cajon PD who keep our kids safe, phenomenal. We then went on the barnstorming tour, and spoke at all 6 of our middle schools to the community about what we were doing and how we were doing it. So we went from a facilities look to a personnel look. Facilities, as an example, you want to save money when you're a government agency, or you should, right? So you put these lights on that if you walk in and walk out of a room, the light turns on and off. Well, if you're in a lockdown situation and there's an active shooter and you move and the light turns back on, that's bad, right? Nobody thinks about that. But that was something that we came up with, that was just next level concept. Finding the safe wall. Which teacher, where's your safe wall? Well, people think that we want to be as far away from the front door as is possible, right? Because if somebody starts shooting it, well, that's not true, and I'm not going to tell anybody who the safe wall is unless you've been trained. So we worked through all of those. So we work off of what's called the ALICE program. Most people know, fight, flight,
run, hide, fight.
Run, hide, fight. We don't do that.
Not anymore.
No, because a lot of the problem is you can't, unless you're trained, the fight component is not going to ever materialize.
Right.
And that's a lot of people to train on that concept, especially teachers and personnel staff, so we don't do that. So we use the ALICE protocol. I'm not going to go through that. It'd take way too long. We don't have enough time on the rest of the show. But it is a next step level program on how we, again, train our staff and train our kids. So if you're a substitute teacher and you're at one of our elementary schools, and then you're going to be a substitute teacher on one of our middle schools, and you're going to be a substitute teacher at another school, the programs are all the
same protocol.
Exactly, the protocols are completely.
And I don't think people realize. What's your budget? I mean,
$300 million.
$300 million.
Yeah, you do not want to put somebody on school. I'm just going to make this advocate statement because I know that there's a lot of people that want to run for school boards and want to run for water boards, want to do other things in the government, and you should. At the same point in time, understand the concept. You are running a budget in my district of almost $300 million, right? If you're not in business, if you have not operated that way, if you don't understand contracts, I'm not saying you have to be a lawyer. I mean, I have that background. I'm lucky. I have an undergraduate degree from San Diego State in finance. I'm lucky. I worked for Wells Fargo Bank, which I think Mike did as well at one point, going through law school. I have some background that helps in this area, but understand what you're getting involved with. When people say you overspend because you spent $5,000 on food for your staff, and your budget's $300 million? No, $5,000 for a staff of several hundred depending on circumstances is actually a reasonable circumstance. At the same point in time, you turn around, you look at San Diego Unified's budget. I looked at that because I was on another news set today about them. Almost $2 billion is their budget.
It's enormous.
$2 billion.
Well, because it's not their money.
But
exactly. So they just run through it like it's crazy.
But $300 million. I mean, I think that's like a bigger. I think that's bigger than like the city of Santee.
Oh yeah, it's bigger than the city of Santee and the city of El Cajon combined. I said we're the largest employer in
So
East
a lot
County.
of people, I think that school boards get overlooked. And,
They do.
And you just kind of like whatever. We'll just the head of the PTA or whoever, like just whatever. You guys are dealing with a much bigger budget than like I said, the mayor of Santee and the mayor of El Cajon combined.
You
Right,
got
and
the
it's
right
huge.
people in the right place. You got to be a businessman or a woman.
It helps.
You got to understand finance.
Right.
And you got to be proactive, not reactive.
Very true. I mean, look at what we do, right? What do we do on a school board? One, we are educating kids, we're keeping them safe.
Right.
However, but on the business side of the school board, right? Business side, curriculum, right? So you should be educated about how do you do curriculum. I've written our PE curriculum, I've written history curriculum, and our civics curriculum. I've actually helped physically do those things, which
All right.
I'm very excited about.
We just got to get him his own radio.
Exactly. So the safety thing. But one more thing before we go to break.
No, go ahead.
The security thing.
Yes, very important.
Do you think?
And we're redoing that right now, by the way.
Do you think that somebody from the Brady organization would have done as good a job? You know what I'm saying?
Oh no, they would have.
Of
They would
course
have said everybody run and hide.
Yeah, well,
but they're reactive.
let's have a resolution to ban guns. Or
Yeah,
whatever,
and there's another thing. They would have been political about it instead of active about it.
And you're up for re-election next year, right?
Yeah, 2024, one more term.
Do you
All
have
right,
a?
you're already voted in.
Do you have a website or anything up yet, or not yet?
Yeah, the website I think is still stayed up from the last one. I think it's a Miller for Cajon Valley School Board, or maybe my daughter who's sitting in the background can look at that on her smartphone
Okay,
and tell me where we're at with it.
All right, well, hang on, because we're going to have him ask the question.
I don't think we need to do any more commercials.
Thanks for watching this clip from Gun Owners Radio. If you're watching mainstream media, you're not getting the truth about guns. Gun Owners Radio is the easiest way to stay on top of the Second Amendment fight, the fight for your self-defense rights. You can watch our live stream on YouTube every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, or if you're in San Diego, AM 1170, FM 96.1, The Answer. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform. Just search Gun Owners Radio and you'll find our show. Like and subscribe to help defend and restore the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.